Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Today, we're going to continue the conversation around the future of cities in these next few years. When we look at a post-COVID future around cities, how have cities changed? How will cities change? What does that mean for us? But more importantly, what does that mean for you as entrepreneurs and for you as investors? What should you be thinking about and where should you be preparing for this next future ahead of us? And we've got some outstanding co-hosts who will be walking us through their thinking and their minds of where all this goes as well. First and foremost, Raghu, I'm going to kick it off with you today. A big introduction, but before you go, a big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode of VCTV possible, as we couldn't do it without them. With that being said, Raghu, up that way. Raghu.
Thanks, Kyle and LATOKEN and VCTV. Really appreciate this. I learn a lot, and hopefully I can contribute a little to some of the entrepreneurs out there. I think this, I'm a serial entrepreneur, angel investor and strategic advisor from Princeton, New Jersey. Specifically in the clean tech area, I'm interested in, I think, de-risked, early stage opportunities. And I'm working with a couple of companies, advising companies in the diagnostics area in terms of how to do testing to open up the economy.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Raghu. Gary, welcome back to the show. A little intro, a little background.
Yeah, great to be here, Kyle. My name's Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've done 17 companies, involved in 2 unicorns on the original management team of Click Software, sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion about 26 months ago, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded a little over 5 years ago. It's amazing how time flies. Anyhow, I love artificial intelligence and quantum computing. I'm now on my 127th article on AI and quantum and startups. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly distributed around the world. We work in places all over the world: Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, Australia, Indonesia, Singapore. We look for opportunities where there's a great intellectual capacity and to be able to take those companies global using Silicon Valley as a port. And it's great to be here as always. And Kyle, it's been a little over a year. I feel like we're family. Actually, I feel like we're all family here. It's amazing. I see you guys. This is our therapy session, our tech therapy session.
Monday therapies. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Last but not least, Gianpaolo. Welcome to today's therapy session on a Monday morning. A little intro and a little background for everybody.
Yes, thank you, Kyle. Thank you for having me here. This is Gianpaolo Parigi, serial entrepreneur, investor, and advisor. And talking about the therapy session, I was just looking, where's the couch? So I can lay down and enjoy. So happy to be here.
I got one here in my background. You're welcome to use it.
Right.
Your virtual couch, Gianpaolo, just for you. And I'm a psychologist too, so it fits.
There you go. Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. Jumping right into today's topic again, talking about cities in a post-COVID future. How will cities be looked at and how will they be redefined for us as citizens, but also as we look at it from investors and entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs for the opportunities and investors for the opportunities to build, grow, and scale, and maybe even opportunity zones as well. Gianpaolo, let's kick it off with you. What do you see as this future of cities in the next couple of years as things start to change?
Well, I think this topic is fascinating for everyone, not only for investors and operators, but I think also for the general public at large. So I think really LATOKEN VCTV had a great idea of addressing it. I see everything in this context. And for example, at present, I'm in Europe, and I can see the resurgence of living in the countryside. A lot of people are discovering the benefits, the pleasure of living in the countryside. Cheaper, prices and, nature, outdoor. low criminality, crime rates, and so long as you have ease of transportation and a good internet connection, you could work in many jobs, particularly in services, from pretty much anywhere in the world. On the other flip side of the coin, I would say what it was 2 years ago, for the first time in history, the world has experienced having the majority of the population living in urban areas. And I, for one, I was born in a large city. I always lived in big cities, and I love the fast pace and life in the fast lane in big cities. But I must say that I find it very peculiar that at the moment when the world peaked in terms of urban population, something like this pandemic sort of put everything into shape, and possibly is trying, of course, not there was any willingness in a pandemic, but obviously it is quite peculiar. And as I say, it's happening that a lot of people are considering whether or not to move out of cities in a moment in which, as I say, more than 50% of the world population lives in urban sprawl. So I find that quite intriguing as a sociological thing, to examine. And I think, after the pandemic, the cities will continue to thrive and grow. Megalopolises will continue still to grow. I don't see definitely people fleeing to the countryside, and en masse. But I think that there is a certain rebalancing of the distribution of the population. And again, particularly those who work in advanced services, in the tertiary services sector, can work from pretty much anywhere. And, continents like Europe that are not so big, where even in the countryside, you're never too, remote or far away from an airport or a bullet train station. I think that are quite interesting. I've seen in Italy, in France, the prices of real estate in some villages going up 19% on average since COVID hit. Again, it's an indicator. But I see this trend happening all over the world. I was just speaking to Thailand yesterday, and some of my partners in Thailand moved out of Bangkok with the family, and they are now on the islands, and they decided to remain there. So it's happening in many countries. It's quite interesting to see what is going to happen. But again, no easy prediction, but I would say multiple predictions at once.
Wonderful, thank you. And Gary, coming to you, same question. What does this look like? What does the future look like from your view?
Yeah, so we've over the last year we've really been, taken down to our core and understand that there are certain things that are really important for us. And when we had this COVID with the lockdowns taking place and people couldn't go out of their places, couldn't really venture outside, they understand that there's more to life than just being in an apartment in the middle of an inner city and staying there for months at a time. So we understand how valuable our freedom is. And at the same time, this migration out, simple pleasures, biking, walking, things that we took for granted before that we didn't necessarily do all the time, all of a sudden became really important to us, spending time with our families. And also, let's take into account the fact that we can work remotely now, and we don't have to be in the office. In fact, couldn't be in the office because of COVID. So our whole life to change. And as we look forward, these hybrid models where we're able to spend some time in the office, but not all the time, are really a lot more acceptable today than before. So, we have had to understand and learn over the last year what's really important to us. And companies have had to understand that if they want to keep their employees, they need to think differently. And thinking differently is they want to move into different locations and work remotely. And now with the digital transformation and technologies like StreamYard and Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams, we now have some of those capabilities to be able to do it that weren't really accepted pre-pandemic as much, but now are really standard life today. The digital transformation's upon us. What McKinsey said would take 10 years had to happen in a matter of months for companies to survive and individuals, to be able to keep moving forward both in their professional and personal life.
Raghu, same question. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think I would take a different take on this. I think when we talk about cities for the post-COVID future, I think we are talking about smart everything. As Gary said, the digital transformation has accelerated things, but we are talking about smart transportation, smart health, smart grid for the power, smart work and education we already talked about, and smart homes and smart buildings, right? And I think the movement is to create these smart cities, not necessarily in the metro areas, the current huge kind of densely populated metro areas, but move them a little bit out so that you can use the new infrastructure like 5G and some of these things to create, you don't have to have legacy systems to worry about. So you can actually create things from, a greenfield type of things. So I think that is happening, as well as things like vertical farms, which are away from the main, congested areas of the city, right? So one of the things I wanted to really talk about is how we can open up the economy, given this pandemic coming back now with all these variants and things like that. This is a recent white paper that was written by Ginkgo Bioworks, and what they're talking about is we need continuous testing and tracing to keep doing this for another potentially 12 to 24 months to really be able to get rid of the pandemic. And it's kind of similar thing on a lesser scale to watch for new pandemics or variants that come, right? So what they're talking about is rapid pooled testing. Like, so instead of how do you test like 10,000 people, what you do is you divide them up into maybe 200 50 pools of 200 people, and then it's kind of like divide and conquer, right? Like binary trees. So maybe like 3 of those pools are positive, and then you divide them up further. And so this can be done with rapid pool testing. 10,000 people can be tested with maybe 20 tests, as opposed to if you're going to test all of them together. So, but this has to continue to be done, and one of the things is to shift to a saliva-based test, which is much more convenient than a nasal swab. So for kids and seniors and all that. And so the idea is to pretty much kind of keep testing the schools or offices and, campuses, college campuses and things like that, so that you can actually not have to worry about this thing coming back, because still it's not clear how long the immunity is. And there are people, even with both vaccine shots or whatever, the single shot for J&J, still some of them have contracted, COVID variant back. So I think this is a very, very important thing. How do we keep testing so that the economy can open up again?
So Raghu, with that being mentioned, what about vaccine passports? There's been a lot of discussion of vaccine passports on a global scale, and this idea kind of merges and blends into the future of identity, and something we've talked a lot about here on VCTV. So decentralized identity, or just digital identity as well. So how do you see all of that playing a role? Because to me, it sounds like there is something that's going to happen, right? That new digital identity, but also security plays a role into that. The moment that data gets leaked, we've got some problems. So talk to us a little bit about how this might all play out.
Yeah, obviously the security comes into any of these kind of digital systems, and security and privacy as well. So I think many of the countries, as you know, in the US, we got paper cardboards, whereas many countries are actually putting it in digital systems, right? Electronic systems. The key, I think, the vaccine passport, I think it's still not very clear for the time being. I think vaccine, you're going to have to show the cards in the US, because we still don't have a digital system, but it will soon happen. And there are pandemic management systems that can just verify it. It's not that you're going to get, you won't be able to download anything other than say, is this, is this true kind of thing for the vaccine. So that way we prevent any security leaks in terms of people being able to download any other personal information. You have to provide the information and it will just tell you yes or no, right? That's one way to prevent any actual data being downloaded, right? So the vaccine management systems did not come in play before the vaccine deployment had to be made. That's why we saw such, I don't know about Europe, but here it's pretty much, there were like so many systems, everybody had to log in, and then whichever came first, you went there and got your vaccine. So it was behind, and but now slowly people have learned from it, and there are newer companies that are coming in. For instance, India did a very good job. Their COVID app actually worked, and we have lots to learn from that. It's the same company that implemented the vaccine management system in India did it for the United Nations as well, and so they probably we could learn a lot from some of those in the US. They are actually trying to pilot in some of the counties now. So I think it is still in the incipient stage, and I know some of these large players like Microsoft, Salesforce, and Oracle got together, and I have not really seen yet, whether they have made a dent in terms of how many people they have in their system. But again, we go back to the privacy issue. It's something that where ultimately it should be left to the individual person to share their, whether it's a vaccine passport or their COVID testing results, and not, make it somebody else controls it. Like we have had these free systems where people have our data, right? So we have to be able to make it so that even if you pay a fee for it, it should be something we own the data.
Gary, anything to add on to that?
I mean, it's so in terms of the testing, you're right about it, Kyle. I mean, the we don't know how long the shots, the vaccines are going to last, whether it's Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca. We just, it's unclear. And it's kind of interesting that we have these cards now that are going to be basically, our admission tickets to be able to get on planes, trains, a whole lot of maybe hotels. So it's going to be interesting to see how it's implemented. It is kind of funny. Raghu, I saw you smile. I mean, it's kind of funny that we have paper cards in a digital age in the US. It's kind of odd that we have those. So I think that, in terms of the kind of impact that this is going to have, this is just, we don't know. The third wave of this coronavirus is now starting to hit. The variants are starting to hit. It's unclear whether or not the vaccines are going to be even resistant against some of them. So what I say is that, yes, we need to have some of those systems in place to allow us to have a hall pass to be able to get in. But at the same time, this is not, COVID's only one of many different potential pandemics that are out there. We need to understand the infrastructural changes that need to take place. Look at what's happened with air travel. Look at what happened with restaurants closing down, the systems that had to get in place, the supply chain. From my perspective, the cities need to understand that they need to make substantial changes. And you're right, as people start to move from the cities to the rural locations, it's going to continue to change things. We need to have communications capabilities, whether it's fiber optic or broadband or whatever. But we need to be able to have those everywhere so it's equally accessible. And the other thing is, now we have, cross-border. It's a whole lot easier to do cross-border communications, cross-border business, and more. It's a lot more acceptable than it was a year ago. Well, let's use what we have. It should have happened a long time anyhow. Look how much more efficient and effective and optimized it is. In fact, I don't know about you, but for me, I mean, when I get on a plane, now thinking about getting on a plane, I'm thinking of how much time I'm going to waste and how inefficient it is sitting on a plane doing nothing for, or working, but for 5 hours not to be able to communicate is, it's like deadly. And I didn't think about that before, but now it's like critical. So we got to rethink it. And the cities, look at what happened at the beginning of the pandemic. Checking your temperature, going into buildings. You don't hear about that at all hardly anymore, right? Rarely. But
you're right.
We need these modular, adaptable systems. Buildings need to have that. Cities need to have it to be able to adapt accordingly based on what's needed. So if it's temperature here or coughing there or whatever it is, whatever kind of characteristic, but we need highly adaptable systems, security systems on steroids, if you will, to be able to adapt to certain conditions. The good news is hopefully it's going to be like the Spanish flu and we're not going to have it again for another 100 years. But listen, the mortality rate on some of these other things that are out there are a whole lot worse than what COVID is. I mean, it's 75% mortality. So what I would suggest is we look at, on a side note, we start looking at ways that we can do drug discovery a whole lot better. So if those worst case scenarios happen, we can adapt to it and change very, very quickly instead of trying to remedy the problem after the fact.
Enter the picture of artificial intelligence and quantum, ladies and gentlemen. But before we go down that rabbit hole, Gianpaolo, anything to add onto this discussion around passports and identity?
Well, I don't want to speak about vaccines because I'm not qualified. I'm not a physician, but just of course as a consumer and the person that is living through this, like the rest of you, I am quite interested and intrigued by the applications and the developments and how people react. For example, here in Italy, Frecciarossa, the Italian bullet train, started providing already, as of a few days ago, COVID-free trains, bullet trains. So basically, you can opt to ride a COVID-free bullet train if you take the test. And of course, if you pass the test, you can board that particular train. Otherwise, you take the normal bullet train, and still you have to wear masks even in the COVID-free bullet train. But I mean, it's very nice to see that transportation systems are adapting to the situation. And I agree with what Gary said. I'm a aviation type of person and not a train type of person. But for example, also with the increased speed that bullet trains have achieved in countries such as Japan first and Europe second and then China also, and the United States will be next. Up to the 600 miles, there's no beating a bullet train. I mean, we can cover 600 miles in France, in Germany, or in Italy in slightly more than 3 hours. And there's no beating the train. On the train, first of all, you don't have all the extensive security control up front. Of course, stations are gated and you have to pass inspection, but definitely you don't have to undress and open up everything. So they have a different system. And you can work on the train. I mean, you can communicate, you can use your phones, or also you can decide to use a car, which is, phone free. So there's all sorts of options depending if you want to just doze off or take a nap, or simply not hear the cellular phones vibrating or computers, being keyed on. So the reality is that there's a lot of new things happening that are quite intriguing, and I see as a mega trend, probably one important trend that corporates are trying to take the chance to downsize. Personnel is left at home, sometimes induced to remain at home even after the pandemic is finished, with some additional bonuses, perks, maybe an increase in salary. But definitely I see that we are going to evolve to a cellular society where, rather than having corporate drones, we have sole practitioners, perhaps working exclusively for one corporation, but definitely from a remote location, be it in the city or in a rural area. But, companies are trying to shred off fixed cost salaries, and everything that comes for the ride on the bandwagon for union purposes and social welfare. So basically, I see there's a first step, companies are putting people at home as employees. And as a second step, they are trying to convert these employees into contractors that will invoice the corporation, and they will have their own tax number, EIN equivalent and work from home. I think if it's done properly, it could be even a positive thing for both families, individuals, and the corporates alike. And I think if it's done properly, it can reflect on the shareholder value as well, because companies will possibly trim cost and increase performances and margin if people are happy to do that. Obviously, I don't think all of them will be obliged to be home. Obviously, certain activities have to be concentrated in offices, and we will not grow beyond it. But the technology is opening up enormous possibilities that are actually unfathomable. I mean, we got Gary here that can, continue and talk about that for hours on end, and it's such a fascinating topic. And I know we are the first generation. I said that before. The first generation that will not be capable fully of fathoming, where the technology will go, because we have reached a point in which, to a degree, technology can invent itself, with minimal or no interventions from the humans. So the possibilities are, growing to geometric, if not exponential. And there's never been a period in history where innovation has proceeded with geometrical pace. So it's been incremental, especially in the last century, in the last 2 centuries, but now it's completely, gone bananas, one would say, and it's really, it's fascinating. But I'll leave it to my illustrious colleagues to speak about that more in detail.
Wonderful. Thank you, Giampaolo. Raghu, I want to come to you for closing thoughts as to where the opportunities are that investors should be paying attention to now over the next 2 to 3 years when looking to make investments in the space. And then, of course, where can they find you online to continue the conversation?
Sure. I think I can be found online at Raghu S. Rao on LinkedIn. And I wanted to, continue on the thread what Giampaolo was saying about it's called exponential everything, right? Exponential medicine, exponential, pharmaceutical, biotech. Every area there is exponential growth because of the innovation kind of happening, all taking off this time. I mean, given the digital transformation that's happening. So I think all digital exponential technologies, including, instrumentation. Some of these are, cyber physical technologies as well. I think that all of them are on the growth path, but underlying that, we need the security and privacy. And then there are some enabling technologies like, AI and big data and cloud. So all those are growth areas, and smart cities are where they're going to happen, whether they are previous metro areas or new kind of more distributed cities.
Wonderful. Thank you, Raghu. Gary, to you, closing thought, where can you be found online as well?
Yeah, so these are incredible times. And of course, with all the data around us, as we speak about smart cities, smart homes, there are going to be a lot of data points, a lot of IoT. That data is going to come at us. We're going to need some new types of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning to not only understand the data, to help us make better decisions, and ultimately an unsupervised AI way to make those decisions for us, because we are in, as I've said many times, a state of infobesity. So we're looking for that. So interesting takes on artificial intelligence, and of course quantum computers, because with all that data, the marriage between artificial intelligence and quantum is upon us. Remember, a quantum computer can be a lot faster, 100 million times faster than a supercomputer. What that means, it could do something that takes 10,000 years in 200 seconds. So in fact, just before this call, I was on with some folks from Cambridge Quantum about exactly that. So we are in this state. Our lives are going to fundamentally change. As Raghu said, it's exponential. So strap your seatbelts on, enjoy the ride, be a leader rather than a follower, and let's go down and live longer, live better, and have some fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary. Giampaolo, close us out. Any closing thoughts on where can you be found?
Yeah. Just to take it from where Gary left, I don't think seatbelts will be enough to keep us. This is going to be really fantastic and phenomenal. Now, anyway, Thank you for having me here today.
Wonderful. Thank you as well, Gianpaolo, Raghu, Gary. Thank you so much for the time today and speaking on today's topic. To our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, make sure you click subscribe, like the episode, share it, and check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear from today's co-hosts and all speakers of the VCTV family as well. A big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. You can find me along with all of our guests online 24/7, 365. We love to hear from you, so do reach out, add context, where you heard us, where you met us, and what you would like to continue the conversation about. With that, everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow with more VCTV.
Thank you. All the best. Bye.
Hey, everybody. Bye.